I get it. You are here because you want to find the altcoins that are going to perform the best in 2025. I mean, who the hell wouldn't want a time machine? Well, guys, in today's video, we are going to look into what projects I believe are going to be the biggest and best performers in 2025, which is very important to look at right now because obviously hedging into that is going to be a pretty important thing, of course, for our back pocket. So in usual fashion, I'm not going to obviously just give you, 5, 10, 20 altcoins today and just say, hey, these are good because of, well, everyone else thinks they're good. No. I'm going to give you these altcoins because of the research I'm going to present to you in today's video, which most importantly is something you can go ahead, take a look at, observe, and then apply yourself. Now, importantly, to do that, I think you're going to have to do more than just watch a video. So in this case, of course, I'm going to give you the link to this exact spreadsheet down below if you want to learn more or at least understand this a bit better, and go ahead and apply it, download it maybe, research more. Go ahead and do that yourself. You can, all right? So of course, let's now take our attention to the screen. And of course, these altcoins will see the biggest gains in the 2025 bull run. Buy now at your own discretion. I think not financial advice is something I have to point out here. Okay, if you guys don't already know that. And so you might be asking, how the hell does Kyron know these altcoins are going to perform well? Okay, well, it's pretty simple, but it's going to require some projections, or at least assessment of previous, current, and future sort of time frames here, or at least variables, all right? So it all has to do with narratives. And quite literally, you're going to have to go with the flow. What do I mean by that? Go where the money is, going with the flow. Very important, not trying to... One thing I had a big problem with when I first got into crypto was feeling like I had to be better than the market. I had to, be one step ahead of the market, or I had to, research so much that I would find the projects before everyone else would. We're not trying to do that. Yes, we do have to technically be one step ahead of the market, but what we're trying to do is just make sure we're following where all the money will flow and just getting ready for that position. It's simple, okay? Or at least it's easier said than done. Now, forget worrying about anything else in research. This, narrative speaking here, is the first and foremost most important thing you absolutely need to know, and at least remember, do first in your research before anything else. So we're going to take you through this step by step, and there's 6 steps in this, but of course it's going to be very easy for everyone to understand them when you get to the projects and the coins at the end of this section. So number 1, what narrative is your altcoin in? Now, as I said, go with the flow. What does anyone do in any sort of professional field? They got to go research what actually is happening and what the current trends, if you will, are. And in the case of a gold prospector, this typically means going where the gold has been found, or at least on the outskirts of these regions to find more gold, okay? You don't want to start searching for gold where there geographically is no chance of gold to be found, okay? And the same thing in this case. In this case, where that end goal is, okay, where that gold essentially is essentially what narratives, or at least sort of like sections of the industry, will find most people wanting to put their money in 2025. Yes, a lot of our favorite projects are going to be really, really good in 2030 plus, but are they going to be good narratives in 2025? That is the question we're going to hopefully answer for you today. So in this case, what are narratives? This is things like layer 1s, layer 2s, interoperability, metaverse, oracles, payments, DeFi, NFTs, supply chain. These are all narratives, and CoinMarketCap has about 300, literally 300 different types of what they call narratives or categories in crypto. Now, these can be things like individual ecosystems. For example, Hedera HBAR might have a category or a narrative. These sort of things as well. What we're looking for here are the most prominent narratives. We're not trying to find little nuanced narratives like lending narrative, lending and borrowing narrative, like NFTs with a hint of X. We're not doing that sort of stuff. We're looking for the primary big player, big money narratives, okay? And so this leads me into my number 2 step here. How many primary narratives does a project have? Now, what is a primary narrative? A primary narrative is something a project is commonly associated with. Before we continue with this video, I would like to thank the sponsor, and that is Grape. Now, what is Grape? Well, essentially, it's a brand new state-of-the-art, super fast layer 1 network built on top of what's called a DAG, different to a blockchain, but much faster, allowing for the network to push of speeds up to and beyond 700,000 TPS. Now, the really unique aspect about Grape is that being tailored towards gaming and the metaverse, understands what it has to provide, not just for developers, but also for the end users. It has amazing NFT capabilities and also an inbuilt state-of-the-art AI tool that allows it to be leveraged by developers to do low to no code tooling and also for end users to eventually use as well. It's literally mind-bending. Now, I've made a full video on Grape. You guys can go ahead and check that out in the description below. But I want to say, for a limited time, guys, they're offering 10% bonus on their tokens if you go and sign up for free on their website and buy the tokens from there. You can do so with the link below. You must use my link, though, to get that 10%. So with that being said, thank you so much to Grape for sponsoring this video. And with all that said, let's get back to the video. We're going to run through 3 examples in just a minute here because projects can have more than one primary narrative. For example, Chainlink. When you think of Chainlink, what do you think of? Oracle. It'll soon be known for interoperability, but right now it's an Oracle, okay? Just like any other application, what's the first thing you associate with it? Now, upon deeper research, if it's a smaller cap project, you might have to figure that out yourself. But like, what's it branding itself as? That's called a primary narrative. Now, again, there can be many primary narratives. Some projects have like 3 or 4, and we'll get into the reasons why this is actually important to look at in a minute. So keep in mind that these, aka primary narratives, 100% do evolve over time as these networks begin leaning into a specific direction, aka they start finding suitable use cases. Right now, HBAR, for a prime example, is beginning to find more and more supply chain use cases, okay, because the network is designed really efficiently for that sort of thing. Now, does more primary narratives mean the project is better? Absolutely not. It just means you're likely to have more than one chance to profit in that project. And if you miss one run from a narrative, you're more likely to hit another. Now, we'll get into this in a little bit more detail in a second, because right now, if you haven't watched previous videos I've made, that's going to make not a lot of sense to you. But again, we're going to touch on what that actually means in a minute here. So let's run through 3 examples. For example, HBAR. Let's break them up, right? Primary and then sub-narrative. So a primary narrative of HBAR, what's the first thing you think of Hedera HBAR? Well, you think it's a layer 1 network, period, okay? Now, sub-narratives can evolve into primary narratives. As I said before, projects, when they begin to grow and find more suitable use cases, maybe there's an upgrade that happens with HBAR that now makes it particularly suitable for a gaming narrative. Well, these things can come up, right? So then, the gaming narrative in this hypothetical example might then, form a primary narrative because HBAR then is known for that, right? But what is the first thing you think of? It's a layer 1 network. What comes next? What's its other main sort of narratives? Well, tokenization, payments, gaming, DeFi, NFT, supply chain. Same thing with Ethereum. Like, Ethereum is pretty well synonymous right now with DeFi, right? People know Ethereum as DeFi, and that's because it's been here first, right? It's a very rich environment, and this comes with time, okay? And so that's kind of an example with HBAR over here. Now we have something like Quant, right? The Quant's an interesting one. Now, Quant's main primary narrative here is interoperability. Pretty simple, right? But actually, it's got an orange in here. I'm going to throw something in the works, because orange, I marked it as that because I believe, technically speaking, it is actually a layer 1 network. It allows for businesses to build on top of Quant, called maps. But right now, because the network is so juvenile, like their network's pretty much been released as like a month, right? So it's very, very new. Therefore, people don't associate Quant with a layer 1. And this is the difference. You might know something, but is it synonymous with the project? And right now it's not. So I wanted to highlight that orange because it pretty much is in the transformation stage from sub-narrative to primary narrative, but this takes a little bit of time, okay? And also Quant's known for IoT tokenization, probably a lot of these different things, okay? And last but not least, VeChain. I wanted to throw this one in here because it actually does have 2 primary narratives. So primary narrative number 1 is, of course, it's a layer 1 network. Number 2, it's supply chain. It is heavily focused on supply chain. And of course, it offers other services as well that are not quite synonymous. So essentially, what we're doing here is just identifying the primary and sub-narratives. You won't find a project like HBAR pumping up significantly from a DeFi narrative. If HBAR expands and, has its really, really big ecosystem, right? Like, let's just say Ethereum, for example, or even some somewhat big ones like, well, Cardano's is quite big, but like Solana, for example, as well, Algorand. When these eventually do evolve into the size of Ethereum, you can have one of these seasons, like many people speculate with Polkadot, where you have parachains running, or you have the dApps on parachains running, so on and so forth. But they aren't quite there yet, so you'll find that all these sub-narratives won't push the price of HBAR up because there's no real ecosystem there yet, no Hedera run, essentially. But you will find that Hedera will definitely benefit from a layer 1 narrative. Again, if you're not really around on the channel, if you haven't seen previous videos, it's still gonna be quite foggy, but we'll get there, don't worry. So number 3, will this have a similar effect in 2025? So what I'm saying here is, will these primary narratives perform well in 2025? They might have performed well in 2021, but will they do well in 2025? And the thought exercise you have to have with yourself is, okay, so what if we had the bull run right now? Are these narratives gonna be important? For example, if we had a bull run right now, would everyone be flocking to IoT? No, because IoT isn't at the point right now where it's going to actually be leveraged effectively. Yes, there's going to be IoT definitely building and growing, but kind of like what I'm seeing more with supply chain now, supply chain is starting to actually take off a little bit, starting to find its legs, whereas IoT quite isn't there yet. It's going to take longer to evolve, but once it gets there, it's going to be massive, okay? So for example, something like IOTA, right? IOTA is definitely a quality project in my eyes, a lot of your eyes as well, but is it going to have explosive potential in 2025? Well, I think it will definitely outperform whatever it does in 2025 in 2030, okay? So it's very important what we do here is kind of put a number out of 10 on these projects, okay? This is very subjective, can I just tell you right now? These are my rankings, and keep in mind, these aren't all the bloody narratives out there. So we've got like layer 1, 9 out of 10, because we'll definitely have a layer 1 run. Layer 2, definitely. Interoperability, yes. Privacy. And the difference between 10s and 9s in this case is simply because I believe the way crypto is right now, where it's going to be, I believe the next evolution, the next step is going to really come behind things like interoperability, privacy. Why privacy? This is the thought exercise you have to have with yourself. Is essentially because the way the world is moving, privacy is going to be pretty important. Things are getting more and more constrict, and if you're someone that doesn't agree with that, you are not awake. And let me tell you right now, and I mean that in the best way possible, all right? Wake up. Tokenization as well, 8 out of 10, quite powerful, I must say. More things are being tokenized. We have Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, people like that talking about tokenization. It is coming. Tokenization of commercial, residential real estate, these sort of things, stocks, whatever it might be, right? Actual houses, cars. This is coming, right? Gaming, of course, is a 10. Oracle's a 10, of course. Metaverse, storage, AI. Now, these things are subjective. Again, remember that. I've got supply chain 6 out of 10, IoT 4, so on and so forth. But essentially, these are the power, I believe. Now, of course, I want to make something very clear to you guys. If we come down here to like one of the lowest ranking ones, right? NFTs. NFTs are still going to perform well. They're still going to have that little moment. But in my opinion, they're not going to have as much money flow as something like Oracle or gaming. It's just as simple as that. Okay, that's kind of the way out what I'm saying here. They're going to still probably do well. All these will do well. They're all primary narratives, like large narratives, but not as effectively as some of the big ones. And so this is kind of what I've been talking to you about, like bits and pieces along this whole video. If you've been lost until now, what's this guy talking about when he's, mentioning narratives and how they're important? And if you miss one narrative, you have another primary narrative, and that's why it's always good to look at multiple projects with big primary narratives. Well, this is the reason why. This is some research I recently did, and I do plan on expanding this, especially for my paid course, which is months away from being complete. And essentially, I've just kind of like walked down from specific points in the last cycle here with projects and their narratives. For example, this is the payment narrative, XRP and XLM, all right? And so what I've done here is pulled out this little chart, if you will, to its when they both peaked. And you'll notice I've done this for each of these narratives, all from the same period, all lining up all of these charts. So all these charts are actually in line with BTC's top. So BTC's top here, if you actually drew a straight line down, you would actually link all of these perfectly up, so they're all in line. And what we can find here is obviously that narratives play out differently. So if you're someone, right, if you are someone, and you go ahead and read all this sort of stuff I've got on the chart, by the way, who was waiting for Bitcoin's peak to happen, and you're holding XLM or XRP, you would have missed buying these projects at their highs, because their highs happened before Bitcoin had its peak. And what does every influencer tell you guys? Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. They forget that projects have their own individual runs. So again, if you were waiting for Bitcoin to peak and you were holding off at this point over here because you were like, oh, everyone's saying Bitcoin's gonna go up again, falls down, okay, it's coming up, cool. Guys, you would have never sold anywhere near the all-time high for these projects. And this isn't just a one-off occurrence for payments. This is every single narrative. Layer 1 in this case has a different narrative. So while they did a bit of a run over here, okay, and again, all these projects actually ran differently to one another, they all actually peaked at the pretty much same time. XDC, HBAR, Algo, ADA. Now you do have some off examples like NIA, which is an example for a whole different video, which I have made, by the way. You guys should go ahead and watch it. I'll leave the links down below. But more or less, you can see what multiple primary narratives does for oracles, for example, right? Oracles can, based on what networks they are, have different narratives. Now, in this case, it was simply just oracles had a couple different seasons here, but more or less, you guys get the idea, right? More narratives, you can take more advantage. For example, theoretically speaking, if we were in, let's just say, DeFi down here, we could have taken advantage of the DeFi pump on our project. Let's say our project had a mix between DeFi and gaming. Well, you could have taken a big profit over here and then sold down on the retracement, because what goes up must come down, of course, as we all know. And then obviously bought back in the dips over here, and then obviously bought in these gaming projects, and you would have been up again. So you're doubling up. But had you simply waited for a universal time to sell like everyone tells you to do, then you would have been screwed. You would have missed tops on some narratives and so on and so forth. But that is obviously why it's super important for you to go ahead and actually assess these projects individually, find their primary narratives, and make sure if you can benefit from multiple, you do. And if not, you can connect something like DeFi to gaming and optimize your returns. So number 5, what could affect a narrative? Now, at the individual project level, what might alter a project's velocity in a narrative or run in a narrative, okay? Velocity means how fast it can explode. Well, recent news, so roadmap events and unexpected events might come out, so they might have a long-lasting effect or a short-term effect. For example, a roadmap event like a technical upgrade that might better suit a project towards a certain niche might have a longer term effect, pretty much mean that it'll always have more pressure on the market than what an unexpected event would, like a centralized exchange listing that might, temporarily pump it up, or something like a partnership, so on and so forth, okay? Also, a project's dominance within those narratives / the overall market. So you'll have to observe things like social engagements. So Lunar Crush, rather, is a really, really good project I like to use to look at things and search by social dominance. So I'm ranking here in terms of social dominance. And as you can see, these are the top 10. Obviously, it goes down further than this, but to give you some idea, and I always search the same sort of projects. Whatever I'm invested in, I'll keep a good eye and tab on those projects. So for example, Hedera HBAR, Quant, Casper with the C, so on and so forth. If I can see they're constantly ranking like up the top 100, even though they might not be in the top 100, I know there's some social engagements there. And social engagements push the price of projects up, because the more people that want to buy it, the higher it goes. Simple as that, right? And so also altcoin versus competition. So you can use things like CoinMarketCap to search categories and just have a look at the project itself versus its narrative, who the top gainers in a certain narrative are, so on and so forth. This obviously all comes back to help what could affect a project within the narrative itself. So searching within the layer 1 narrative itself, we can see HBAR over here. This is slightly off center. My OCD is playing up on me. Altcoins will always move against the trend of their narrative, which can be a good or a bad sign, but ensure it's just not because of, temporary news. So for example, HBAR here, as you can see, all layer 1 networks are pretty well moving sideways / down. HBAR is 25% up on the 7-day. Why is that? And then you go and do your research. Hey, there's no news that's been out. Maybe there's more consumer sort of, I guess you could say, confidence in HBAR. Again, it's very important we isolate news as these sort of events, all right? And so what we can do after we analyze all this is come to what altcoins do we actually buy, right? And now I could sit here and just list you 10, 20, 30 random projects. However, I think it's more important for you to know where the most money will flow in 2025. But make sure you're subscribed, because these are guaranteed to almost change. Because as I said, we're traders. We have to be flexible. If we stick with a narrative forever, you will lose money. If you're flexible and bending with the times, that is honestly when you can, be able to make quick decisions and obviously, change your mindset, which gives you the more returns. Now, in my opinion, these are some of the best narratives. I've added a few here: layer 1, layer 2, Oracle, gaming, payment, AI, distributed computing, ZKPs. And these are some of the projects I personally would say they have my vote of confidence. Okay. Also, I've got some question marks here. Why? Well, this isn't because they're questionable narratives. It's just because they're ones that I can't really put an exact number on right now, because they can go either way. Right? There's things like launch pads, so like PokerStarter, proof of work networks like Cardano, insurance, gambling, music, so on and so forth. Right? Rollbits over here. And then, of course, in the what I don't believe will be very, very powerful narratives is things like digital IDs, DeFi, decentralized social, NFTs, IoT, supply chain. But actually, it's funnily enough, because I think all of these, apart from maybe even NFTs, actually, no, to be honest with you, I believe NFTs will definitely have their time, but I believe all of these will eventually be literally 10 out of 10s. But we're talking 2025 here, guys. That is the main difference. Okay, so these aren't bad narratives. They just don't perform well, I don't believe, in 2025. So I've made a mess of the spreadsheet. I'll clean it up for you guys. Go down below, use the first link, please go and understand this yourself. Take the time and apply it. Again, this is the first and foremost thing you should do before you research anything in your project. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate it a lot, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.